Our theme for this week is share something you love. And we are going to start with Renee, who has a cool hobby, interest,
Obsession? I don't.
Other fandom.
Manilow. Many of you have already talked about it, but I love Barry Manilow. And so I'm going to start with a little bit as to why Barry Manilow, because most people look at me and go, wrong generation, what's going on? What happened? Why wires crossed? What? I had pretty bad postpartum depression after Michael was born, and he is 8 years old now. And I really just denied it. But I started questioning all my life choices. Why am I teaching? Why am I living here? Why did I move here? Why did I get married? Why this? Why? And just kind of went down a rabbit hole of questioning everything that up until that point I had been perfectly content with. And I didn't like the way that I was feeling. So I just kind of started to gradually build this wall up and went, no, I don't like the way that's feeling. So I'm just not going to feel anything anymore. And so I wouldn't allow myself to feel joy, happiness, sorrow, grief, anything. I just shut down, kind of became a robot. Nobody really noticed because I was really good at faking it. You know, my mom was like, your smile didn't reach your eyes anymore, but that was pretty much the only way that I knew. And that was because it's my mom, so you can't get away with anything. But nobody else really noticed. And then one day I was driving to work and Weekend in New England came on. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. There was just all this passion and emotion and energy and feeling in this one song that just like hit me. And I ended up having to pull over on my way to work, and just the dam just burst and I was just sobbing. And so then I just started listening to more Barry Manilow, and I realized that he has a lot of passion and energy in all of his music. And so I kind of learned more, and I became friends with fans of his from all over the world. And I know you build genuine friendships because of it. And it also allowed me to recognize the patterns that I had in my own mental health and accept that I'm really good at building that wall and remembering, take the stones down once in a while and, you know, stop building the stupid wall. And so these are some of my hats. And then I decided I needed more. So I kept adding to the collection. So this was from his Las Vegas residency, which he is currently in the middle of and got shut down because of COVID. And then these are just some of my t-shirts that I've collected over the years. Most of them are from his One Last Time tour. That was the first tour that I started seeing him. And the pink one is actually the only bootleg t-shirt. Everything else I try to buy official, but I couldn't not buy the one that said, yes, I speak fluent Barry Manilow lyrics. And then this is some of my loot. He passes out glow sticks at every concert, and he calls us his fireflies. And there's one song at the end of the show. It's called I Write the Songs, and you crack your glow stick and you have a certain pattern that you wave the glow stick. Everybody in the whole crowd does it, and he looks out and he sees all his little fireflies out there. And that champagne flute is from the Platinum experience, where I actually got to meet him. You pay through the nose, but it was worth it. And then the signed anniversary of Mandy, I got that from the Platinum experience too. And that's definitely a prized possession. And then these are a couple of the programs from the different shows that I have seen him at. The purple one is from the One Last Time concerts. The red one is from when I saw him in LA. So the streamer at the top, when I moved from Colorado, my coworkers thought it would be hilarious to throw me a Barry goodbye party. So the whole theme was Barry, and they got me a cake with Barry's face on it. And they had berry decorations all over the house, and it's wrapped in red and green tinsel because we moved from from Colorado to Oregon in December. So this is the art that people have made and drawn. Most of this is by an artist, Jacqueline Lubin, and she's amazing. And I used to have that picture of Barry at the top in my closet, and Matt was like, can we not have the half naked Barry in the closet getting dressed every morning? So that one had to get moved because he was like, yeah, no, not digging that. But the one that's below that, that's framed, I had that one hanging over my bed forever, and it's the eyes. It's just amazing. She captured his eyes perfectly. So it's one of my favorites. These are prints of the ones, but he actually signed the originals because he was so impressed with them. So, but yeah, these are all her also. She's so talented. I love these. These are little minis. So they're only like this big. So the whole collection is, the size of maybe that big when they're all together, but I just love them. And then these, this was, so his last shows of the One Last Time tour was in Denver, and a whole bunch of us decided that we thought it would be fun. There was about 50 of us. Those are Copacabana sleeves that during Copacabana, we could just stick on our arms really quick and wave around. And if you don't know what they are, just Google Manilow Copa costume and you will totally understand what this is. And you can just imagine 50 crazy people waving their arms with the Copa sleeves. And he was cracking up on the stage because he was like, oh God, you're just as crazy as I am. And all of his stuff comes in red boxes. So anytime something red shows up, I tend to get very excited. It's like, I know what this is. And so this is when I met him, was in San Diego in April of 2015. And I don't know if you can see that, but that was us. And then this was the picture that I took from my front row seat. And then this has become a tradition for my mom and I to go see Barry as often as possible and travel as many places as we can to see him.
That is so cool. It's amazing. Wow. And you've been a fan for like 8 years?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's a lot of experiences in 8 years. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think we've seen him about 10 times.
Does anybody have a question or a comment for Renee?
I'm glad I'm not the only one here is a Manilow, is a Fanilow, as they're called. Loved him since I can remember. And in fact, you're talking about your mom and you going to concerts. The first concert I ever went to, I was a young teenager, and my mom took me to see Barry Manilow, the two of us. That was my very first concert, and it was so much fun. We had such a blast.
Oh, that's awesome. My very first concert was actually the Rolling Stones with my parents.
That's not bad either. That would be good too. But it's nice to see that other people love them as much as we do. So you're not alone. Definitely not alone. If you ever comes to the Baltimore area and you want to travel to the Baltimore area, we will meet up and go together.
Or Washington.
Perfect.
So you were already well versed in the idea of a fandom community before you happened upon us.
I was, but it's very different because the Manilow, this is much more tight-knit. Mm-hmm. This is a much more tight-knit community than the Manilow fandom.
Has he announced new dates for the Vegas residency yet, or are you still waiting?
He has, but I'm still waiting because I don't want to buy tickets. I have a really hard time when the shows get canceled, and it's really hard for me to recover from that because I'm so excited for it. So for right now, and until I know what's happening in the world, I just am not going to put myself through that. We actually had tickets last March, right before everything shut down.
I think we talked about that on you in your,
So bummed.
first. It would have been our first social club meeting actually, because you were one of the very first people to talk. And I remember you talking about, because it being Sid, of course, music came up.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Renee.
Thank you.
I love that you love it so much.
I do. It makes me happy.
All right. Staying on the music theme, we're going to Zoe, who's going to play for us.
Yep. Hey everyone. So yeah, I love performing. I love singing. Haven't had much opportunity to do that recently. I'm going to be playing the guitar. I'm not a great guitar player. I know enough that I can sing along with it, which is what I'll be doing. And I'll be playing a song from an artist that I really love called Sleeping at Last. Some choose over time can learn to play nice. Some choose are sharper than knives. Some choose we only see the corners of our eyes. Some choose we wish we could hide. Some choose can save us, some take our lives. Some choose our fire and some choose our ice. No matter what category you fit into, truth's got its sights set on. Truth is north and I'm true south. I can't figure it out, God knows. Always looking up till my eyes give up. It's how I lost touch of who I am and who I was. Some choose we're sewn into our DNA. Some choose unravel and afraid. Some choose keep growing taller than giants. Some choose take our breath away. Some choose get tired. Longer we wait. Truth is north and I'm true south. I can't figure it out, God knows. Always looking up till my eyes give up. It's how I lost touch of who I was. If truth is north and I'm true south, I can't figure it out, God knows. Always looking up till my eyes give up. It's how I lost touch of who I am and who I was. Some choose are gentle, forgiving, and kind. Some choose are hard to define. Some choose are crooked with rough edges too. Some choose wear like comfortable shoes. Some choose are loyal as the shadows we leave. Some choose are stubborn as gravity. No matter what category you fit into, truth's got its sights set on you.
That was beautiful. You did a great job. Tell us more about the song and who's the composer.
His name's Sleeping at Last. I've been listening to him for since high school. So that's 6 years, especially in quarantine. I got super obsessed with his music. It's it started as a calming sort of study music. So I had it in the background. And then when you really listen to it, the lyrics are perfect. He composes everything, and he's also extremely detailed in his songwriting. His discography has a whole theme that he's been connecting through years and years, that it's he's exploring human nature through in Earth. He did all the planets, and then he in the directions, so that was south, so that was his planet themed album. His second one is on human nature, so he's getting more, that's the album about the present. His next one coming out soon is like has to do with like the future, and every song is he'll have all like even the length of the song and the instruments he uses, the whole composition goes towards the theme of the music. He has a song called Taste, and he used all like kitchen appliances.
Oh, wow.
And yeah,
This sounds like the full experience.
very, very talented for sure. Wasn't expecting to talk about him, but there you go.
No, you have to answer questions. You can't just come on. You have to answer questions.
Of course, of course.
I saw Sleeping at Last, like zooming, like a whole bunch of people commenting in the chat. So maybe folks here are familiar with this person. Does anybody want to comment or ask a question?
Okay, isn't Atlas a really, really, really good album? Like the
Oh my
extended
gosh.
version, not just the 6 or 7 songs, but the whole extended version.
Yeah, that's actually the themed. So he has Atlas 1, which is the one with the planets and the directions, and then Atlas 2, and on the way Atlas 3, which is he's digging even deeper.
Okay, I'm done being fandom.
Yeah.
Yes, Atlas, amazing.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Zoe, thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. Christy has a presentation.
Hey everybody. So classic film, I'm a fanatic for. The earliest films I remember seeing are like The Adventures of Robin Hood and Casablanca. But classic comedies especially they keep me going. It's like slipping into a warm bath at the end of the day sometimes, especially when I'm having a bad day. So I wanted to talk about that. There are lots of reasons I like comedy. One, I have anxiety disorder and depression. Comedy is good for you. It lowers your cortisol. It lowers your heart rate. It just makes you feel good. Like clinically, studies show laughter makes you feel good. As Charlie Chaplin says, a day without laughter is a day wasted. And Charlie Chaplin is the OG king of comedy, in my opinion. Anybody who works in a kind of field that has some kind of repetition like that these days, I know I certainly feel like Charlie Chaplin in that scene some days where you just lose it. And he is just an amazing dancer, and his movements, in my opinion, like, because there's several early comedians in the silent era, and I've been watching a lot of his short films lately. A lot of them are being found around the world and restored. It's amazing. What makes it work for me is he combines his comedy, which is slapstick, which he learned in British television, with heart. There's a lot of just beauty in some of his films, and they're like 30 minutes long, the shorts, but they're so soulful. And a lot of his life was, especially his early life, his childhood was tragic. He had a rough life, and this is how he eventually escaped it, was his comedy. And a lot of comedians stand on his shoulders. Point number 2, and this is what I was going to say before we started, is comedy, in my opinion, is very personal. And I think it's more personal than maybe any other genre for people, is because it has such a huge effect on you, that what you find funny may not be what somebody else finds funny, but it doesn't really matter because it affects you on such a personal higher plane, in my opinion. And by the way, this is all my opinion, aside from what I say is science. Researchers are still studying like why some things are funny to people. And one thesis is that people derive amusement from finding discrepancies between expectation and reality, which I think we've all been in that situation. And we find those moments where it's just like the little inside joke or just the little thing you're like, this is hysterical to me and I don't really know why and nobody else really knows why, and that's okay. He's not a comedian, but he's a filmmaker who made funny films. His name is Ernst Lubitsch, and he's one of my favorites. I put in a quote from him: "At least twice a day, the most dignified human being is ridiculous." The Lubitsch touch, it's a marketing slogan, and it's Hollywood. Back then they manufactured everything, but it really came to mean combining sophistication with humor, which is something that's really big in Ninotchka and films like that he did. They were serious. They took serious matters, like this is about communism and communism versus the West, and To Be or Not to Be is about, Warsaw being invaded by the Nazis. He took serious matters and serious people, but found humor and heart in those situations. And I think that helps me, especially these days, to kind of find the humor when we need it. And the dialogue is so good. Just pointing out some of his other films, and these are films that I happen to enjoy. The Shop Around the Corner, not really as funny, but is beautiful. It's the precursor to You've Got Mail. Precursor. It's basically You've Got Mail. It's what You've Got Mail is based off of, if you've seen that. I seem to remember, actually, it's one of Sid's favorites. And he did several early films. His work goes back to the silent era. The Merry Widow is another just fun one, with one of the ones he did with Maurice Chevalier. Chaos is funny, which I know this forum already knows that. And the Marx Brothers. I love Monty Python, don't get me wrong. I love all of that. The Marx Brothers to me are just the best. So the Marx Brothers lived with chaos. They were... Mama Marx wanted her son Groucho to go to college, and Chico to play the piano, and Harpo to play the harp. And she was very disappointed because her boys just took all that and kind of turned it on its head and became this vaudeville act that jumped to movies. And every time they're in a scene, it's just electric and hysterical. And the jokes are rapid fire. And sometimes you don't even realize what they're saying until they say it. They moved over to MGM, and MGM kind of tried to bottle that insanity and add some structure. And the first two films are amazing. And this is one of them, A Night at the Opera. But they kind of start to become more formulaic after that and not as good. But I own them all. And I do mean I own all of them. And they are worth seeing. You have to love them. So last slide is just my little tiny tribute to Groucho Marx, because I adore him so much. I've read his bios. Humor is a reason gone mad is a quote from him. He has some of my favorite quotes. And those are some of them. Outside of a dog, a book is a man's best friend. Inside of a dog, it's too dark to read. And the last one, that's one version of that quote. It's probably his most famous. I don't want to belong to any club that would have me as a member. I think everybody has heard some version of that at some point in their life. So when you need something to cheer you up, it's the best medicine.
All right. Thank you, Christy. A little quick trip through classic comedy films. Does anybody have a question or a comment?
I really liked your presentation. I also am someone who grew up with old movies because my mom loves them, and I really liked a lot of the ones you showed were ones that are favorites of mine too, particularly Night at the Opera.
I figured. There was something else I was going to go with, and I was like, no, I better do Night at the Opera because I know that like you and other people would.
I think my mom showing me old movies is part of why I ended up studying film music. Like, it really instilled that love in me from an early age.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I really actually wanted to go into film myself because of just watching old films with my parents. Just the first films I can remember watching are classic films. And I have been taking stock of my favorite films lately, and I'm like, almost none of them were made after I was born. And
yeah, same.
Can we do some classic film watch parties?
I've hundreds. I've got DVDs that just are waiting. I have like every streaming service you can imagine just because I don't have a DVD player in my bedroom. Just let me know when. I will give you.
Yes, please.
I had some film classes in college, and we almost never talk about comedy. We almost never watch comedy movies. It's all about, I love all the other genres, but comedy has always been a favorite of mine. And I think it's often seen as not as highly like technical greatness as other movies, which is completely absurd. I mean, you've seen Chaplin, you've seen the Marx Brothers. It's so hard to make people laugh. It's so hard to make actually good comedy. And comedy can also like have drama, can also have political commentary, can also have so many other things, and can be explored in such a unique way. And I really, really loved your presentation. Thank you so much.
I have a recommendation for you, Christy, if you haven't seen it already. What's My Line?
The show?
The show, yeah.
No, those are like on my list after I finish up with Chaplin of things I want to look at. So definitely.
I forgot about those two. My parents, we would watch those with my parents. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Christy. That was really cool. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight and for sharing. We're going to wrap it up for tonight. Sid will be back next week. I don't have anything wooden around here. Everybody knock on wood if you can. Barring anything going wrong, he should be back next week, and we will be back more normal format, what we've been used to for the previous 11 months. So hope to see you then. Have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you next time. Okay, welcome to the Sin City Social Club for Friday, April 2nd. A quick message that I don't think Sid will be joining us today. He's pretty much just arrived home. He will be back starting next week and all through the month of April. So this week's theme is share something you love. To start, we're going to begin with Amy and Sarah, who are doing a presentation about Star Trek actors and Broadway.
And we are talking about Star Trek actors on stage. A very brief, limited introduction, just the highlights.
Yeah, when we planned this, we knew we'd have to limit the time, so we kept the scope to TV show, main casts only, just Broadway and West End, which is not even scratching the surface of this, because we could have done an entire like 45 minutes to talk on like one of these actors. All right. The first, obviously, is Patrick Stewart. He's probably the most well-known theater actor of everyone who's been on Star Trek. His first professional job was at the Library Theatre in Manchester, and then he went to the Royal Shakespeare Company from 1966 to 1982 and did too many shows to even begin to list, dozens. He made his West End debut in 1969 in Bartholomew Fair, and his Broadway debut was 1971 in A Midsummer Night's Dream as Tom Snout, which is a shirtless picture here on the left. He won his first Olivier in 1979 for Antony and Cleopatra. He then later wrote and appeared in a one-man adaptation of A Christmas Carol, which ran every year from 91 to 94 on Broadway and then 94 on the West End. And in 2007, he appeared in the Scottish play on the West End, and then the production went to Broadway. He was nominated for both the Olivier and Tony Award for his performance. He played Claudius opposite David Tennant in Hamlet in 2008, and also in this production was David Ayala from Discovery. In 2009, Patrick Stewart appeared in Waiting for Godot on the West End with Ian McKellen. In 2013, the pair brought two plays in a row to Broadway, where they performed Waiting for Godot and No Man's Land on alternating nights with the same cast. And I saw that for my birthday. His last performance on stage was in 2016 when he and Ian McKellen performed No Man's Land on the West End.
The next person we're going to talk about is René Auberjonois, who made his Broadway debut in 1968 in King Lear, where he played the Fool. And his first noteworthy role was in Coco, which was a musical about Coco Chanel, also starring Katharine Hepburn. And he played Sebastian Bay and won the Tony Award for Best Featured Actor in a Musical. His second Tony nomination was for The Good Doctor, which was a comedy by Neil Simon. His third Tony nomination was for Big River, which was a musical adaptation of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. He played the Duke, and who with the King were the con artists who attempted to swindle Huck and Jim. When he left the show in 1985, he was actually replaced by Brent Spiner. After that, he was in City of Angels, where he received his fourth Tony nomination. City of Angels is a phenomenal show. It's about the movie business. And after that, he didn't appear on Broadway until after Deep Space Nine had ended. and his next show was in 2002. One of his last shows was the legendary flop, Dance of the Vampires, which is a musical starring Michael Crawford, and it ran for 3 months. And then his final Broadway role was in 2004 in a play called Sly Fox with Richard Dreyfuss.
Okay, Brent Spiner made his Broadway debut in a show called A History of the American Film in 1978. In 1984, he was in the original cast of Sunday in the Park with George, which is my favorite musical, and appears on the video recording with Mandy Patinkin and Bernadette Peters, if you've seen that. He then started as Aramis in a musical revival of The Three Musketeers, which ran for 9 total performances in November of 1984, which also not good. And then, yes, when Renee left Big River in 1985, he was replaced by Brent Spiner as the Duke. In 1997, he appeared in a Broadway revival of 1776 as John Adams, and his last appearance on Broadway was in 2002 in a play called Life Times 3, I think that's how you pronounce it, by Yasmina Reza. We were a little disappointed we couldn't make you sit through the whole song, but.
Anthony Rapp is the other most well-known Star Trek actor on Broadway, in my opinion. He made his debut in 1982 at age 9 in a musical called The Little Prince and The Aviator opposite Michael York. He also appeared in Precious Sons and 6 Degrees of Separation. 6 Degrees of Separation was with Robert Duncan McNeil from Voyager, and then he later played the same role in the movie. He is, however, best known for his performance in the original cast of Rent in 1996, and then the movie, and then the West End debut. Those two are actually reversed, West End debut, then the movie. Then he starred in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and his last appearance on Broadway was in 2014 in the musical If Then with Idina Menzel. And just another bit of information, Wilson Cruz also appeared on Broadway in Rent, and he played Angel.
And then, of course, this guy, Sid went to the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, and his first jobs were at the Library Theatre Manchester, which you heard about last week with Paul. He appeared in such pivotal roles as Israeli Soldier in Brother Eichmann and Batty in Sinbad the Sailor. And this was about circa 1989. After that, he moved to London and worked with Arts Threshold Theatre, which I saw described as a basement fringe theatre in Paddington. It was co-founded by former Lambda students with David Asbury, who was a former Lambda instructor. He aside, Brian Asbury was the founder of the first racially mixed theater in South Africa during apartheid, which I thought was super interesting. His next stage credit was actually in 2005 with Whose Life Is It Anyway, starring Kim Cattrall. He then appeared in Holy Warriors at Shakespeare's Globe, the New Globe, in 2014. He played Saladin in the first half, and in the second half, the former Israeli Prime Minister Begin. And just as a side, thanks to Mel and for the pics and Colin for the info.
And this is only a 7-minute presentation, so we're not going to try to go through everyone else. You can just kind of see thrown at the screen how many Star Trek actors have performed on Broadway and the West End. And this is still only a handful.
So if you're curious, definitely let us know. We can do a whole Sid talk if you want. And
thank you both. It's interesting how many Star Trek actors are also stage actors. You know, I know that there's kind of a tradition, at least for the first, for Next Generation and DS9, and I think for Voyager maybe, but especially Next Gen and DS9 to have stage trained actors cast. So, and then they go back to the stage. Does anybody have a question or a comment? An anecdote from watching a Star Trek actor on Broadway?
Does he sing at all?
He hasn't done a musical, if that's what you mean, but he does sing. Yeah. Sarah and Amy, are you both like big time Broadway fans? Is this a passion of yours and you're waiting for things to open up again?
Yep.
What's the first show you want to see?
The first one I want to see was actually, I had a whole trip planned to see like 6 shows last April, which did not happen. And I was going to see 6. I was going to see The Company, the Marion Elliott directed with the female lead, Assassins, at my favorite director, John Doyle, off Broadway, Yeah, I just had so many, and a lot of them, they're like, yes, they're still coming. We're still gonna, when we open up, and I'm just like, please, any day now. I miss it so much.
And I'm only 90 minutes from New York City. So for me, I don't usually make plans far in advance as much as, oh, hey, it's a nice morning. I'm going to go hop on a train and see what's at the TKTS booth. My best friend's been trying to drag me to see Hadestown, though. So I'm hoping that that will actually happen this year.
Yeah, half our meetings when we were planning this were like, we would sit down, do the presentation, and then spend the next hour just talking about theater and how much we missed it. So it was really cathartic to put this together with Sarah.
Good. I love it. Well, thank you, theater nerds. Appreciate it. I like the connection between theater and Star Trek. That's nice.
Yes. And we can do, or Casey can let us set up a Sid talk where we go into like all the theater people that were in the movies, and oh my gosh, it's so many.
It's a good entry point, right? It's a good gateway to Broadway. Yeah.
Donna Murphy, highly recommend.
All right. Thank you, Amy and Sarah. Next, we're going to go to Christine. Christine has a cool fandom to share.
Yes, my something I love is the show Murphy Brown. I thought of this while Renee was talking about Barry Manilow on Tuesday, because one of Murphy's things is that she hates Barry Manilow. I don't agree with her. That's not an endorsement. All opinions are Murphy's, but it definitely made me think of this. I first came to it seriously when I was in college. I was really young when it was on the air. It started in 1988, and I was born in 1988, so I was way, way, way too young. But it was something that my parents watched. I fell in love with all the characters. It made me laugh, and it was so good for me at the time because I was very, very depressed, and I needed something like that to just get my mind somewhere else, just get one little band-aid on it, because at that point I had no band-aids on it. So I had it bad for this show. And one of the things that makes it sort of hard to love the show is the fact that it's not available to stream or to buy anywhere, because copyrighted music was such a big part of it. You would have entire scenes and entire like character motivations built around songs that would play in the show. I was like looking around everywhere to see if I could get it in any way possible. And one day the treasure hunt did succeed, and I got a hold of the rest of the show. I was so, so happy. Nothing could have made me happier. And it was truly like I died and gone to heaven. And I watched it over and over and over again. One of the things that they did on the show was they had a bunch of mock-up covers on Murphy's office wall. Like, here's Murphy interviewing the Pope. Here's Murphy winning a fake award. Here's Murphy doing this and that. But as the show went on, there were a lot of real covers that were published in the real world. And so then those got added to Murphy's wall. So if you looked on her wall in later seasons, at the very least, you would see that Newsweek issue that's right there. This is just a sampling of some of the more interesting looking ones that I have. These I got from a lady on eBay. People just cut these out of their old TV guides and things, and they sell them in big lots. So I was like, sure, I'll pay a couple of bucks for these old pieces of paper. And they became very, very treasured to me, because it's impossible to find, like, nobody has like a Murphy Brown fan site. Nobody has an archive of all this stuff online. So if I wanted to get the stuff, I was going to have to go get it myself. This issue that I put by itself to remind me to talk about the fact that I actually got to go to a taping of one of the revival episodes. It had a revival season in 2018. And I have no physical mementos of it because, of course, you're super not allowed to take pictures. In fact, they make you put your phone in this kind of like electronic pouch, and it gets locked up until the moment the audience gets released. So you have nothing. You pretty much have to tell people, oh yeah, I went, and hope they believe you. You don't even really have like a ticket or anything. It's pretty crazy. But I was able to go together with one of my friends who I actually met out of shared love of the show, and it totally ruled. It was a dream come true. We were in the front row. We had to have been the youngest people who were there, but that didn't matter to us at all because we were way too elated. I mean, I never would have thought that it would actually get back on TV, and I never would have thought I would be living in a place where I could just cruise into New York City and see Phil's bar again, you know, in real life, see Murphy's house in real life. And they built it so accurately that I was getting kind of emotional sitting there. I was like, oh my God, it looks exactly the same. Oh my God. I have a collection of some of the commercials for the show that aired, you know, like originally, like new episode, they're Monday night, or commercials featuring members of the cast, some interviews and behind the scenes features from the 90s that were aired on like Good Morning America and stuff like that. So I've amassed a little over 150 of those kinds of files in that folder. And then of course the show itself takes up a lot of room on a hard drive. So that is my jam. It's kind of hard to love a show that's not on DVD, but I think it's fun.
What is it that you like so much about it? What appeals
Oh
to
my
you?
gosh. Well, like I said, I fell in love with all of the characters because they were all so quirky and kind of mean to each other sometimes. But at the end of the day, you know, they all wanted to do the right thing and they all cared about each other. So it was very like, you know, nah, 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 nah. And then they'd turn away and then they'd be like, okay, I love you, just kidding. And Murphy, of course, herself is very, she was a very different character for TV at that time, especially in 1988. I mean, because she was petty, she was vindictive, she was selfish, she was generally a huge pain in the butt to anybody who encountered her. And she often did not have the patience for social niceties. She struggled with being the old American standby of caring and nurturing. And she was a recovering alcoholic, so she had issues like coming out her ears. And there's a lot of that I found sort of relatable.
Also had this really strong sense of ethics.
Very much so. Yeah, they all did. All the characters did. And I loved that as well. It was very like news has a responsibility to be accurate and to be truthful, which is, you know, is still a big deal today.
A lot of the conflict was Murphy pushing back and saying, no, we should be able to just present it and people should care.
Right. And she got so much pushback for that from the network executives and other, you know, just like other citizens who were like, why can't you be nicer? Yeah, and it's just like, this is important. Look at this.
Yeah, she was a very, very, she was a groundbreaking character. She was polarizing. I remember when the whole Murphy, she's pregnant and she's going to be a single mom. And that was like, the vice president weighed in on that. The vice president of the United States weighed in on that. And it's the end of civilization as we know it. And, you know, that's okay. All right. But there's like several million single moms out there. So.
You know, it was kind of like It Takes a Village to Raise a Child, because all of the characters came together to help her raise the baby. And that was just something else that I really loved. All the characters had such great dynamics with each other.
They really did. They really did. Yeah. That is actually one of my favorite shows also. And I am forever bummed that I cannot find it. Are there any other Murphy fans here who want to jump in and comment?
Yeah, I mean, that was a great show. I mean, you're talking about when she got pregnant, and the best line I remember from that was, she said, "I am making my choice." and my choice is to have the baby. Because everyone assumes when you say choice that you're going to go the other route. And it was a great message to send out there, even though we're still fighting this thing today. But yeah, and I understand about the scarcity of it, because it took me, I can't tell you how many years to get the DVDs from one of my favorite shows, Mad About You. So don't give up, because it took so long, but it happened. So there's hope. There's hope.
Thank you, Christine. That was a really lovely walk down memory lane. It's been a long time since I thought about Murphy Brown.
Thank you.
Well, speaking of fan clubs, Joan Marie is going to give us a little history lesson on the history of Sid's fan club.
1966, summer. I was 12 years old. The NBC was showing previews of its upcoming shows for 1966. My brother came up to me and he said, "Say, I saw an advertisement about a show coming up called Star Trek. Let's watch it." I said, "Sure, let's do it." And then I saw the advertisement and I was sold on it. So we watched Star Trek, and I was hooked in junior high, so that was nice. In 1970 or so, I was in high school, and I went to a speech competition where one of the other high schoolers from another high school had just gone to the World Science Fiction Convention, and he was talking all about it, and he mentioned Star Trek. So I approached him, and he said, "Say, there is somebody in the Twin Cities who publishes a fanzine," and explained what a fanzine was, and said that the fanzine had stories about Star Trek, and he gave me the phone number of Ruth Berman. So I called, she was the editor. I called her up, got the details, ordered the fanzine, and that was the start of my fan fiction career. I went to my first convention in my freshman year at college, and the first picture you'll see here is Gene Roddenberry. I was at the hotel and they said, "Gene Roddenberry has just come in. Get your cameras and go." So I picked up my camera and went and I took the picture of Gene Roddenberry arriving at the hotel. So the fanzines were all printed, and there were things such as collation parties where we would all put together the fanzines. And this was a collating rack. And this was at Minnesota Science Fiction Society, where I belonged to something called MINIAPA, the Minnesota Amateur Press Association, which you can think of as Facebook on print. And so what we would do is we would make several copies of our comments, and then we would collate them together, and each person would get a copy of everybody else's. The person who is bending down there is doing what we called ego scanning. He is looking for his name mentioned in somebody else's contribution. For Star Trek fanzine fandom, 90 to 95% of the participants were women. In MinStaff and in general science fiction as a whole at that time, it was 80 to 90% men. There was also artwork in them. And sometimes I would buy the fanzines just for the artwork. The artwork was spectacular. You can see the MINIAPA covers from Rick Sternbach, who was on Deep Space Nine, if you look at the credits. How did we network? No internet, no email. In fanzines, there were ads for other fanzines. After 1976 or so, we started having an annual convention of just no guests, no celebrities, just a convention of all Star Trek fanzine fans. So here are some photos from some of the conventions. This is Paula Smith on the upper left. She is the one who coined the term Mary Sue. That is why you should remember her name. Paula Block is in the middle at the top. She was also a fanzine writer and contributor, and she also spent many years at the licensing department of Paramount Pictures. I don't know how she got that job. I have envied her for years for having that job. She is currently in Oregon and occasionally writes nonfiction Star Trek books. On the upper right is Shirley Mayevsky. Shirley Mayevsky was the chairman for most of the time for Star Trek Well Committee. The Star Trek Well Committee had two purposes. First of all, it was to get fans in touch with each other. It was an organization which answered letters about Star Trek. And every month I would get a packet of letters from Star Trek fans that I would answer. That is how we spread the word, especially once Star Trek Lives was published. The book Star Trek Lives was published in the mid-70s. That had the address of the Star Trek Well Committee, and Star Trek Lives covered fanzines and clubs and fans and fan conventions. Now, on the right at the bottom is me in uniform going to a movie of Star Trek 4. Because it premiered in December, December is my birthday, I would often invite other Star Trek fans to have a birthday celebration with me at the movies. And this movie is also notable because I actually attended a day of filming at that. It was the day in which the ship crashed into San Francisco Bay, and they're trying to get out of the ship in the water. And there was a big water tank on the Paramount lot, and so we saw that. And then I saw the first episode of Deep Space Nine, and I was just fascinated with Dr. Julian Bashir. And I looked at the actors and okay, I've got to know this guy. Does this guy have a fan club? Is this guy willing to have a fan club? Can I approach him without looking like a stalker, and all that sort of thing? So I started immediately trying to reach out, and immediately, as it happened, there were people already meeting Sid at conventions and putting out newsletters. None of these are my newsletters, but the two early Sid newsletters were the Doctor's Journal, which you can see on top, and the Medical Log by Angelo Jones, which were on the bottom. Now, these were both sort of flash in the pan phenomenon, because even though, I have been a fan since 1966, and I will be a fan for the rest of my life, there were a lot of fans who, for reasons that I don't quite understand, just, popped into fandom and then did a couple things and then left. At first, Multi-Species Medicine was just a Sid newsletter, taking over from the two newsletters that had discontinued. But very soon, I was able to hook up with Gail, and we were able to put together an official Sid fan club, and Multi-Species Medicine with the official fan club newsletter. So I wanted just a full-fledged fan club that fans would be proud to be a part of. So we had the newsletter, which came out every month. You can see on the upper left our membership certificate that we had. You can see on the right that we gave all the new joining members a picture of Sid. We've got a calendar on the lower left, the 1993 calendar for Sid. Gail said, well, why don't we have a get together with Sid? We'll call it Lunch with the Doctor. So we had the first Lunch with the Doctor meeting in Arizona, where Gail was stationed. And you can see the I dig Sid button for those of you who are on Discord, the I dig Sid button on me that we handed out to everybody participation. And I also insisted that everybody have name tags, because the thing about fandom is not only to celebrate Star Trek, but to get to know each other and to network and all that sort of thing. We had t-shirts for the conventions. And at the Lunch with the Doctor in Minneapolis, I sewed Bashir dolls to use as centerpieces for our lunch. It was Lunch with the Doctor, after all. And half of them had the racquetball uniform on them, and half of them had the Deep Space Nine uniform on them. And you can see I lined up all the dolls on a couch at the hotel before the convention, and then we sold them off for charity. And many of the people that bought the dolls had Sid autograph them. Another thing that we had was on the far left in the middle is the quilt. That Gail made up from squares made up and donated by members of the club, and she put the squares together and presented the quilt to Sid. And there was also a special stamp thing, which is on the lower left here, that we had for one of the weekends. And I had all the actors autograph it, but I don't know how Gail managed to get that done or whoever got that done, but there was a special stamp and US Postal release. I was collecting fanzines for many, 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 many years, and I had a basement full of fanzines. Somebody who was a fanzine archivist or student, boldly writing was something that I wrote in the mid-90s. I took all of my fanzines, put them in chronological order, and then wrote a book about Star Trek fan history and Star Trek fan fiction from 1967 to 87. My fanzines were, just sitting there. And the archivist said, well, why don't you donate them? I think the University of Iowa might want them. So I contacted the University of Iowa and they said, yes, we want your entire collection. Now, what you see here is just the first shipment. There were 4 or 5 shipments, like 95% of my fanzine collection, a whole bunch of stuff is at the University of Iowa. So if you ever have a chance to get there, I'm told that they have cataloged them now. Should be called the Joan Marie Verba Star Trek Science Fiction and Fantasy Collection. So that is the short version of my story, and I hope that you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Joan. That's just that's a very truncated,
truncated.
Through 30 years of fandom. Joan and Gail and I are we're going to be putting together a Sid talk about Sid's fan club from start to now, from the beginning to current. So we're hoping to present that sometime in the next couple of months. So keep your eyes peeled for that, where you can maybe learn a little bit more and go a little more in depth on the beginnings and what Joan did, because she skipped a lot of the work that she put into this, but that's a taste of it. So thank you, Joan. Does anybody have a question or a comment for Joan?
Yeah, I just want to tell Joan, as somebody that does, I did a Doctor Who fanzine for years, and I've done a lot of like music fanzine stuff. And whenever people talk about fanzines in an academic sense, her work comes up. And I don't know if she realizes how important she is in the history of the American zine. And I just want her to know that, because it is like having catalog zines for a library, put them out, tried to sell them at places. Literally, her name is affiliated with this. And I hope she realizes that she's left a really great legacy. So I'm glad she's doing this.
Very flattered with that. Thank you, Rob. Thank you.
I was, I think at the very, the tail end of the Star Trek Well Committee. I'm pretty sure I still have my little packet from 95, maybe the last batch that got out. So that was, I always get a little tickled that I'm like, that I know Joan from the early days. Savannah.
Joan, I already thought you were amazing ages ago when you showed those newsletters for the first time, but every time that you start talking about any of these things that you've done, and from scanning all those newsletters and seeing the incredible amount of work that you put in, because I really got to go through them all, and as a lifelong fan and somebody who's very into archiving things, you're pretty much my hero, so go Joan.
Thank you.
Go Joan. All right, we're going to go on to Rob, who's going to talk to us about one of his favorite things.
Hey, everybody. So I'm going to do something that's probably sacrilegious. I'm going to talk about Doctor Who on a Star Trek thing, although that's not what it used to be. People, that division hasn't gotten as divisive as it used to be. Anyway, so I watched the Barry Manilow thing last week, and it totally reminded me of what has mattered to me and all this other stuff. And I'm in the pandemic like everybody else, sort of decluttering, and I didn't realize, the importance of this until that sort of happened. But I have been a fan of Doctor Who since 1983. I saw a guy one day reading a book, which I've managed to actually get a copy of the same book, an old school hardback Doctor Who book. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And so he started explaining to me what Doctor Who was. So it really helped me develop who I was as a person. And I really started, watching the show and really getting into it. So I literally would go in and buy the Target books, which were the novelizations of the episodes. It really was interesting because it was like, okay, I can go anywhere. I can learn all kinds of stuff about the craft of writing and storytelling that I really liked, but I also liked, it was a great jumping off point for other things. It is really, really important and cool. And I think the lessons that the classic show and the new show teach everybody about acceptance and perseverance and the fact that the universe is out there, be kind. I think those are all universal themes that no matter what decade you live in are really cool. It really helped me get an identity, and it really helped me, like I think fandom does for a lot of people, make other friends at a time before there was the internet or any of that. And it gave me that. It really taught me a lot. And then I started going to conventions. I'll just kind of roll through. This is me and Pearl Mackie from a couple of years ago. This is me and Peter Capaldi. But that's a TARDIS from Wholanta a couple of years ago. That's Matt Smith, Catherine Tate, who is amazing. Yeah, so this is at Chicago TARDIS. My love for conventions got so obnoxious that eventually people were like, well, you know a lot about the show. Do you want to start doing panels? And I went to school to do broadcasting, so I got to start moderating guest panels at conventions. The first one I did, I moderated a Patrick Troughton convention in St. Louis in 1987 or 88. I got to do like a little 10-minute thing with that. But this is me with Deborah Watling, Fraser Hines, and Wendy Padbury, who were all companions of the second Doctor, Patrick Troughton. So that was really cool. And, they get to tell you their stories about the time on the show, and you kind of get to know them a little bit. And that was pretty awesome. And they made me an honorary second Doctor companion. This is me and David Tennant. I could honestly tell you he's one of the coolest people in the world. I was excited. And they told me I was going to do David Tennant. So I got there like 30 minutes early because I didn't want to be late. And then he also got there like 20 minutes early. He's like, would you like a picture? And I go, oh, that'd be great. That'd be awesome. So I got my picture taken with him. I go, thank you very much, David. He goes, oh, no, you can call me Dave. And he's absolutely one of the nicest human beings in the world in terms of doing panels. So yeah, it's been great for me. And I know the thing I think that I love about Doctor Who fandom, and I think that all of the fandoms that everyone's talked about in these great talks today, is that they've really helped me develop my skills in terms of what I want to do professionally. They give you confidence, and they also give you a certain sense of satisfaction. So that's why whenever anyone says they're into a particular type of fandom, I don't give them any grief, because if that's what gets us through this world, and if that makes you understand who you are, that's awesome. So yeah, that is the long and short of it. I know we have tons of other things going on. So that is the really very quick, down and dirty version of how Doctor Who has helped shape me as a person.
That's awesome. I love hearing that it's stayed with you this whole time. And there's, as you said, there's a lot of things that I've learned from fandom, or that I've, skills that I've developed because of various fandoms that I now use in a professional capacity, or, and in personal capacity. Self-confidence is a big one. That's a big one. Let's see, we're gonna hear from Nina next, who is going to share some of her original photography.
Hi. Well, just so you guys know, I'm a nervous wreck right now. But it's the first time I actually share my photography with so many people, like actively do it. Friends and family have seen it, but that's just about how far it gets. So I've got into photography when I was a kid. Like, I was still in elementary school, and I was not good at drawing. I was not good at singing. Photography kind of was something that I was really drawn to since a very young age, and film most, like about 85 to 90% of my photography is black and white, which is something I love because I think that black and white photography, like, it has a depth that most of color photography does not. Then most of the stuff I photograph is places I visit, buildings, cities, which I'm so sad I cannot do right now. Oh, I also love old buildings and cathedrals. Especially there's this one cathedral in Toledo in Spain that's Gothic, and it's just beautiful, which it's gonna pop up at some point. This is it. It's just magnificent, and every time it's kind of I live about an hour away from by bus from Toledo, so whenever I want to get out and just be by myself and have a day to relax, I just go there. And it's such a historic place with such mysticism around it that I just forget about everything else when I'm there. So it's kind of my escape world. Like, this one is one of my favorites, actually. I took it from my car. We were in Romania on our way to go visit my grandparents, and we were stuck in traffic. So I was like, okay, that just to waste, like, kill some time, and I started just photographing around, and this one turned out to be beautiful. Places are easier to photograph. It's there. You have to do your own point of view, and it just gives you a liberty that sometimes studio photography does not. This is my cousin. She was in love with that puppy. I spent a whole day. My grandma had 2 puppies. We spent a whole day just taking pictures of them. I ended up with 600 pictures of puppies. I really believe in the statement that a picture is worth a 1,000 words. So there's so much you can tell through a picture. And then consequently, this goes to film as well. I love something whenever I'm watching movies, something I really pay attention to are the visuals. The visuals and the soundtrack of a movie can do a lot to make it good or to make it bad. These are some of the color pictures I have. I usually leave them on color when, have this kind of pops of color, these details that kind of stand out that otherwise would be lost. And after that, I love taking pictures of skies. It's something, I love sunsets. It's just, I'm entranced by them. And none of these have any filters on them. It's just the picture per se, maybe color enhancement slightly to correct it, but it's just, yeah. Whether it's sunsets on a clear sky, they're beautiful, but also cloudy days have this kind of aura around them that usually, it's kind of mystic and mysterious and magical.
Do you have a digital camera, or are you using actual film?
It's a digital. Well, the fun part of this, I had a camera, it died. It just one day just died. And I haven't had my own camera for 5 years. So it's usually either my phone or I'm borrowing cameras from friends.
Gotcha.
So it gives me the chance to kind of work with different models and different settings, which is great. But I will also at some point this year to try and get into film photography, which I think it's something beautiful. Mm-hmm. The whole process is just marvelous.
Those are gorgeous. I really like the way that you focus on the lines in the different pictures, especially in the black and white. It's a really nice composition.
Thank you.
Does anybody have a question or a comment for Nina?
Nina, do you sell your pictures or sell prints of them?
I thought of it, but I haven't really it's just an idea that's been there.
I would completely buy a couple of prints of those ones you showed. Definitely.
Good to know. I might give it a try.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. I'm glad you were brave. All right, so now we're going to turn to Terry, who has a pretty unique hobby. No, sport. Can you share?
Yeah, as Mel said, now it's time for something completely different than anything you've seen today. I'm assuming most of you, if not or all of you, have one day went to a roller skating rink, got the little rental skates, rolled around the rink for a while and went, okay, that was fun. I did that too. I still do that. But I also, when I was in my 20s many years ago, competed in roller dance skating, which is just like ice dance skating you see in the Olympics, but on roller skates. So yeah, so I just wanted to like introduce you to the world of competitive roller skating. That's the same outfit you saw in the first picture, but we added a lot more stones to it. There's 12 gross of stones, and a gross of stones is 144, so there's 1,728 stones on that outfit that we put on one at a time. I mean, we had a seamstress make the outfit, but we did all the decorative work on it. So it was definitely a long project, but it turned out to be a beautiful outfit. And those are just good old skates. The pair on the left were my dance skates. And the pair on the right were my figure skates, because there's many disciplines in roller skating competitiveness, and one of them is doing figures, which are those round circles you see on the rink. You get to go around the little circles and do different turns and what have you. Whereas the dance skates are more for doing dances like tangos and foxtrots and waltzes and that kind of a thing. Our club had these tests, and each time you would pass a test for a certain skill level, you got a little pin. So these are all my pins for my different testing things. The ones on the left are the figure tests. The four in the middle are American dance tests, and the grouping down to the right are the international dance tests. These are just a few awards from over the years. Different contests, different, placements. If you got first, second, or third, you got a medal or a plaque or a trophy of some kind. This video is just a sample of a kind of a dance. This team is a world-class senior team, and that means that if you place at nationals, first, second, or third, you get to go to worlds. And that's held every year throughout different parts of the worlds. And in 2019, it was in Barcelona, Spain. There was 81 countries, 4,120 athletes competed, and 140,000 fans attended. I just wanted to give you an idea. When I say roller dance, it actually is dance.
How did you get started doing this, Terry?
Actually, I got started doing this because, you go to the roller rink as you do as a kid. In between sessions, they would have what they call club time, which is practice time. So at the end of the session, all these artistic skaters took the floor, and I just would watch them for a while, and it got interesting. And I told my mom I wanted to start taking lessons. So I started with the Saturday morning lessons that a lot of rinks have, the basic ones. Mm-hmm. And I got done that. And my next question to the teacher was, okay, now what do I do? And his first response was, go home. No. What do I do next as far as my skating skills? Like, how do I go? I'm done with these classes. What's next? And that's when I got introduced to the club. And taking off of coaches, which are called pros for professionals, because this is a kind of sport you do it only because you love it. So if you do this, you do it for the love, and you can teach. If you are good enough, you can turn around and teach. There's no touring shows like the Olympics champions get. There was one exception to a professional life after competitive roller skating is done. And that was on Broadway, interesting enough. We were talking about Broadway earlier, with Starlight Express.
Oh, yeah.
That was all about trains, and the whole cast was on skates. We got to see it once when it was in LA, and it was a lot of fun. And actually, someone who was in my skating club in Delaware, actually, when it first started, went to London and tried out, and it was in the cast. It was a unique opportunity. So, I mean, they don't come around a lot. And I don't think there's been anything since.
I took lessons when I was little and didn't like it because I don't like falling down.
There's a lot of falling down.
Yeah.
Didn't dance.
I know roller derby, but
Yeah.
I didn't know that roller dancing was a thing.
There's roller derby, there's roller hockey, there's speed skating. And in artistic, I mean, I just did on dance because that's what I mainly know. You can do it with a couple, like we saw in the video, or now you can even compete on your own in solo events. But yeah, it's a very good sport. It's a lot of fun. It's a sport that I didn't realize. I did it because I loved it, and I didn't realize how much exercise it actually was at the time until I stopped. Yeah, then I figured that part out.
Yep.
Part of me hopes to get back to it one day. So there you have it, your introduction to roller dance skate competitiveness.
I love it. Does anybody have a question or a comment?
Why
Sure.
is it that roller skating is harder than rollerblading, do you think?
Rollerblading, as you know, is very close to ice skating. So the balance is different because people assume that if you can roller skate, you can ice skate. Well, yeah, no. I can roller skate. It's like going back into a warm bath for me because it was so comfortable for me. And I felt such freedom when I was skating. Rollerblading, I can get around the floor. I do not turn backwards. It's a different balance. So it depends on what you're more comfortable with.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, it's a great sport. I'm always going to be a diehard fan of it. So I just wanted to share it with everybody and introduce you to something you didn't know existed.
That's great. No, thank you. That is very, very cool. Kind of makes me want to get skates.
See, there you go.
Yeah, except for the falling down part.
Now you know my plan.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you for that. Our last presentation today is from Val.
So what I'm talking about today is the Society for Creative Anachronism. So instead of going a couple hundred years in the future, I'm actually going 1,000 years in the past. So this is a piece of art that I made based on an actual period decoration that I drew and colored and made pretty. And so the club that I do historical recreation in is called the Society for Creative Anachronism. The SCA does roughly 600 to 1600, the Common Era. I mostly do 9th, 10th century Norse stuff. My SCA name is Brunhild Vilhelmsdottir, and the Brunhild did in fact come from the What's Opera Doc cartoon of Elmer Fudd singing, "Oh, Brunhild, you're so lovely. Yes, I know it. I can't help it." I love that cartoon so much. So I went with Brunhild, and Vilhelmsdottir is, that's my stepdad's name. And when my parents got married when I was little, I didn't change my last name. And so this was a way to be his daughter in a way that I always wanted to. There's 3 basic areas of playing in the SCA: service, fighting, and arts and science. I'm going to go through service and fighting relatively quickly to get to the part of the arts and science, which is really the part most people are going to be interested in. It's a volunteer-based organization. Events can be one day, they can be camping. There's a million ways to be involved. Without everybody being involved, nothing happens. It's a volunteer-run organization. There's just 1,000 things that you can do to help out. And these are the ones that I could think of and list in about 45 seconds. So there's significantly more than this. There's the fighting, which is super duper fun. That's what actually brought me into the SCA. The 2 major types are heavy fighting and fencing. So in heavy fighting, you wear big, thick armor and you hit each other with big sticks that are trying to approximate broadswords. But it's a lot of fun hitting my friends and stabbing them. That's a lot of fun. And with fencing, it's a little different from strip fencing because there's no strip. And you have weapons in both hands, or you can have a weapon. You can do literal cloak and dagger. You can do sword and dagger. You can do sword and cane, sword and buckler. One of my favorite things about it, like obviously I traveled to Mississippi with a group of 12 friends so that we could go stab people for fun. Like I enjoy that part of it. But the part that I do much more often is next slide, the arts and sciences. I made both of those outfits that me and my husband are in based on portraits of, I think it was 11th century Venetian portraits. If somebody did anything, if there was any art and craft that somebody did, then someone in the SCA does it now. And I just kind of rushed through this because I have things to just show that I have made or worked on. I do calligraphy and illumination of making scrolls for people. These are awards showing the calligraphy and the illumination of things. These are art that I've made and done, again, either based on medieval things, like the skull in the book is based on an actual illustration from period for a period in a period book. And then these are just silly things that I made using the calligraphy that I learned from the SCA.
Does anybody have a question or a comment for Val about the Society for Creative Anachronism?
It's amazing to see just how everything crosses over, just the variety of things that we end up having here.
We're full service nerds here.
I'm noticing that. It's happiness.
Nix, did you have a question?
My spinning wheel is called Varda Elantari, and I actually just took this off, finished drying this morning, and I'm actually spinning up more black because it is actually going to be a top that is inspired by Jadzia Dax.
These are some that I just plied up not too long ago.
I love it.
And so this is basically all the different samples, and then I plied them in different ways with different colors. Like yarn makes me happy.
We have a lot of happy yarn people here. I know Robin is probably in heaven watching you guys, listening to you guys talk. Thank you so much, Val. That is very, very cool. Thank you for sharing that. All right, we are going to wrap it up today, guys. Thank you, especially for this last 6 weeks. I'm just going to say kind of a blanket thank you to everybody. Share things that you love in your collections and your cosplay and all the stuff that we have talked about in the last 6 weeks. You've made it a lot easier for me to do this solo because I wasn't really. A lot of you guys were doing the heavy lifting. So I appreciate that. We will next week, we'll be back to regular programming. He will be back for all of April. And then at some point in May, I don't know exactly when, is when he will head off. And he'll be gone for the rest of the year. So we are working out, what the social club will look like after April. And we'll have some more information to share about that in a couple of weeks. Also, next Friday is our 1-year anniversary of the social club. Looking at putting together kind of a little look back, I think, at how far we've come from when we thought maybe if 30 people come for a couple of months, that'll be fun. So that's kind of what's going on over the next few weeks. And I thank you again for joining us. I'm still just amazed at how many people showed up without Sid here. That's a testament to the strength of this community and how well everybody gets along and how very, very cool every single one of you is and interesting and interested in all of the things. So thank you again. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Mel.
Bye.
Thank you, Mel.
Stay safe.